tell people who you are first?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Muckles. I work at Northumbria Police and I manage the control room, the emergency control room.
Okay, first question. How would you describe mental health?
I think it's a bit of a two-word catch-all kind of thing. From my limited understanding of mental health, it's that it can be not only negative but positive as well. I mean, people can have, their mental health can encompass the good things and the bad things.
Yeah.
And I think we just maybe hear a little bit too much about the negative side of mental health.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying in that video interview, is that everybody's got mental health. And people immediately think of like someone being poorly when they hear mental health.
Yeah.
And it's not, everybody's got it. It's just that some people, it's not very healthy.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Has this always been your take on it, or has something changed it?
I think, if I'm completely honest, I think when I was younger, I might have, I definitely had less, what's the right word to use? Maybe a little bit less tolerance towards people with mental health problems, because just out of immaturity and maybe not understanding as much. I think when I was younger, I'd never really grown up with anyone who'd had any major mental health issues that I was aware of. But in the work that I've done in my career, over sort of the last sort of 10 years, I've came into contact with a lot of people who have had really quite serious issues, and it's changed my thinking on it, and it's made me a lot more aware of people who've got problems and how to try and help them.
I was told like horror stories when I was younger about like our local psychiatric hospital and people in like the straight jackets and being sedated and padded rooms and everything. So it's really scary when you first go into services and you're like, is this what it's going to be like? But like you said, it's like lack of education, I think.
I agree.
It's one of the biggest things.
And I think as well, like whenever you hear about mental health institutions on the TV, they talk about the historical ones, and they're, electric shock therapy and chaining people down, and you're right. I think, as time has gone on, we've got better and better at understanding it and treating people the way that they need to be treated. It's
never in the media like, oh, this psychiatric hospital has done this amazing work with someone in the community, or the police have done this work on mental health. It's just always the negatives, because that's what gets the most press, I guess. And it's not fair, is it?
It's not fair.
What's been your most positive experience with mental health?
I've probably had a few. I probably would say that maybe ones that have been closest to me. So I think I've been really lucky so far in my life that none of my really close friends or family have had any real major issues with mental health that I've been aware of anyway, that they've told me about. But I've had colleagues that I've worked with, or people that have worked for me in my roles in the past, that one or two have had some really serious life-changing events, like family members dying and awful things happening to their kids and to themselves. And I think probably one of the most positive experiences is doing my bit, although I'm only a small part of their life, because I'm maybe their manager or their friend at work, but so I can only help in a small way, but even just making life easy for them at work, to try and make their overall life better. It feels, I suppose it kind of makes you feel like you're giving someone a little bit of positivity in what is a really, really hard time. So I think that's probably made me a little bit proud of myself, if I dare say that, for like helping people a little bit.
What's been the hardest experience, do you think?
Hearing like tragic stories that, when people haven't been able to deal with it, and that they've done the worst thing, like taken their own life or harmed themselves and things like that. And I've known people who I've worked with who have I haven't worked with anyone who's taken their own life, thankfully, but I've worked with people who've harmed themselves, and I think to me that's really tragic, because although I understand why they're doing it, it's like a waste, really. I think that it's hard for me to try and understand why, and it kind of hurts me to know that they're doing that and they're at such a low that they have to do that.
What do you think is the percentage of like calls that you guys get for sort of not just mental health but more like suicide attempts and things like that?
I mean, it would be a total guess, really, but I think, if we're talking about calls that are related in some way to mental health, that involve people who have got mental health problems and issues,
Yeah.
I would say that is probably a huge percentage. I'd be guessing because I've never done any work on it, but just from what I hear in the room, I would say maybe up to even a third or maybe even a half of the calls we get are down to because a lot of the things we deal with are crime, and it's I'm sure I may be wrong again, but I'm sure there'll be some statistic out there to show that that you may be more crime may be more likely to be committed by, or at least have something to do with some, you may maybe have more risk of committing crime if you have a mental health issue, because a lot of the times we do see people who are committing crimes, often they do have mental health problems, not always, mind, that's not fair to everyone, but so I think that a mental health being involved in a call is probably quite high. In terms of what you said, suicide attempts, sadly, I mean, we get probably at least once a week we have a report of someone on a bridge, and I mean, thankfully they don't always do it, they don't always go through with it. Often it's a cry for help, which to me is fine, like that's fine by me, but sadly we get those quite frequently, and I think before I worked for the police, I never in a million years thought that you'd have someone on a bridge once a week. I thought that would be like a really rare thing, but it's quite common, and I think that's quite sad. It's something that we really need to get to work on a little bit more.
Yeah. Do you think the call handlers are quite well trained in dealing with them kind of calls, or?
I really do. Yeah. I do. I think I think there's always more we can do. We can never be perfect, but seeing the call handlers have got the hardest job in here. I really believe that, because they're dealing with you never know when you pick that phone up. You never know what's going to come through. It could be anything.
Yeah.
And so it's not just training. I think it's just the type of person who we have in there to take the calls. I think there are a lot of type of people in the world who wouldn't be able to do that job. I would find it really hard, to be honest with you, because it's taking on a lot of stress and strain from the general public, and you've got to be a really strong person to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I think those guys in there deserve real commendation for what they do, and I think they're really prepared for it. Hats
off to them.
Yeah.
Have you learned anything about mental health because of your job?
Yes, we do quite a bit of training, like I mentioned earlier. We've had mind training. We've had the charity in to provide us with training on spotting the signs of that mainly, one of the courses I was on was for managers, for people on my level and above, to spot the signs of staff and colleagues who are having.
That's my next question, so carry on.
Perfect. So it's to spot the signs of people who may be suffering, and one thing I've learned in my years as being a manager is that people don't tell you because they're afraid to say that they're suffering, for their own pride or just through fear and the stigma and stuff like that. So doing that is a way of, I think the emphasis is making me as a manager more approachable, so people aren't as, not scared to come and talk to me about problems like that, and knowing that it'll be kept in trust. And
what kind of support do you think you'd offer someone like you?
Well, I think just them being able to talk to someone about its support in itself. On top of that, here at Northumbria Police, we've got quite a lot of support that we can offer in terms of, we've got the occupational health department who we've got nurses who work for the force who can provide like proper medical advice, whereas I really can't do that. So if it goes to that, then they can do it. We've got access to like a counselling service. Yeah. So if people need counselling, which often is the case, we've got that. And I'm actually in training at the moment to be I can't remember the exact role now, but it's basically when either a police officer or a member of our police staff have been involved in a really tragic incident and it's possibly affected them. I'm training to be like a liaison, so I can go and speak to them within the first few hours of that happening.
Like post-traumatic stress disorders.
Exactly
like,
that.
Yeah.
And it's to sit with them and let them unload, and to see how you can help them, maybe because some people might be fine and some people might be, a mess, and
that's been a good improvement for soldiers, I think, recently.
Yeah.
Because they didn't used to offer them any support for mental health and the things they would see. And I think when you're providing like such a massive service to the UK, you guys need to be thought of as well, because you can't provide that service if there's something wrong with you and if you're not being able to work properly.
Well, it's funny you say that about the soldiers, because this training that we're going to be doing is going to be delivered by two ex Navy men from the Navy, and they've kind of created this whole course, so it's going to be delivered by them, so I'm really looking forward to learning about it.
Okay. What's the one change you'd like to see in mental health as a whole? So I guess obviously the suicide rates and calls and stuff going down.
Yeah, we kind of touched on it already, but and I think it is happening this as well, but I think the ability for people to feel that they can talk about it now a little bit more, and there's not so much of a stigma now on mental health. And I think just for it to be easier for anyone to just come up and say, look, I feel like I'm suffering from stress or anxiety, or I've had really this awful thing happen in my life, but I feel I can talk to you about it. Like, I think the easier we make that for everyone, the better it'll be, and the more people talk about it, I honestly believe that it'll make people better quicker, and it'll get them over their problems in life a lot quicker.
Yeah, okay. Final, most important question.
Yeah.
Are you going to read my blog?
Absolutely. What is your blog? What's the address?
I'll give you my business card with the link on it.
I'll absolutely read your blog.
But thank you for your chat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then that's